I mean, all this film really is, as you've pointed out, I think is probably the most egregious, provable case of government corruption we've had, maybe ever, but certainly in the most recent history. We all in this country now, I think based on the success of Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, we have a disenfranchised voting public that no longer really trusts the government. I think we know we're being lied to. We've watched the middle class just get crushed. We've watched our jobs get shipped away. The banking getting away with destroying, the middle class, taking our homes. All of this over and over again. We watched the corporation controlling, lobbying our government, energy companies not paying taxes, polluting water and air. But in this circumstance, we now have to look at the pharmaceutical industry, which is the most powerful lobby, the most money, the most lawyers in Washington. And I would say to Bernie Sanders, who I've been a fan of for many years, he has publicly stated he does not like the pharmaceutical lobby, doesn't want them in Washington, yet says he's pro-vaccine and vaccine mandate. And I would just like to say, Bernie, what do you think the lobby's doing in Washington? What do you think it is they want? They want to own the American population, and they're using you as tools. You're tools, in the worst sense of the word, selling American citizens to a mandated product that is dangerous. Maybe not for everybody, but for enough that it's a problem. And this growing epidemic, which we know is a man-made epidemic, to all of, my liberal progressive friends that fought to label GMOs and scream in my face when I say vaccines should be mandated, what part of poisoning yourself do you not get?
Hi, is this on?
Some of this is switching.
Just hold it close. Hello?
Pretend it's on and shout very loud.
I have a big mouth.
I can hear you.
Okay, my name's Ann Temple with Moms Across America. I'm working on the GMO issues, and I didn't really hear you guys talk a lot about organics, which we're really promoting, but my other comment is that you were talking about the science before and listening to the science, and I've been finding that we can't even trust the science anymore. We've got all these science people that are lying to us, and how do we handle that? AAS, anything that comes out of their mouth, I just laugh. So I just was wondering how do we deal with this? It's really, really frustrating.
You're talking to a sort of heartbroken, disenfranchised scientist. I love science. I love the principles of science, and I now feel completely betrayed by science. And I agree with you. What is published simply can't be trusted. As far as vaccines go, what we're lobbying for very hard is this Weldon-Maloney bill, or a variant of it, which gets vaccine safety science completely out of the CDC, completely out of HHS. You cannot referee your own football game. You can't do it. And so it needs to be in an agency firewalled from the industry, the pharmaceutical industry, that is completely independent and is on the back of the manufacturers and the FDA all the time. Is that a perfect system? No, because you can believe that the pharmaceutical industry will somehow try and infiltrate that and corrupt it. But it's a beginning, it's a start. And you need to pay those people well enough that they are not susceptible to the influence of bribes from the pharmaceutical industry. So that, at least as far as vaccines go, is something that can be done and should be done as a matter of urgency. The bill is already written. So as far as it may provide a template for how you deal with things like GMO foods, labeling, toxins, other environmental poisons, etc. But it is a massive problem. Who do you trust? I think the lady in the middle, and then you.
They got a microphone.
Sorry, go on.
I'm John Cranston. I'm a respiratory therapist. I was thinking about tobacco and how that was came out, and all of the people stop smoking within 10, 15 years, they come back to normal. Do you see anything with the autism and maybe something like this?
That if we stop the vaccine
Yes.
program,
And also how tobacco was brought out into the public and how all the money that the healthcare system has really had to spend on tobacco incidences. Now we're looking at autism and tobacco. If they stop, they can get back to where they were before. There's autism.
I'm not sure I answered the second part.
Well, yeah, well, so I think the question is, I mean, first of all, you know, autism is a lifelong ailment, and there are ways to better that experience. I mean, I think one of the hardest things on this tour is that question: can we heal our children that are injured? Polly has a very, very difficult time with this question because she has Billy, who at 19 has really the mentality of a fourth grader. Now, he wasn't speaking and was never supposed to speak, so it's been a huge event to get him through diet and all these things to get to the place where he can say, I love you, Mommy. He's very communicative, but could never live on his own. So this issue of can you heal a child, we meet parents and we meet children that, you know, are very well recovered and some say completely recovered. But it's hard to say it's possible because you know there's those parents out there that have tried everything and somehow they feel like a failure if they haven't gotten their child as far as other people. So we find ourselves in a difficult, you know, situation talking about it. Yes, you can make it better, how far you can get. Are there new technologies out there? I mean, I'm always an optimist saying somewhere out there must be a way to heal these children and get them back. But if your question is more to sort of we know that tobacco science was a giant lie. We had doctors advertising on, you know, television, I smoke Camels or whatever, or, you know, there's even one ad I remember seeing, you know, yes, it makes your, you know, your fetus smaller, but doesn't every woman want to give birth to a smaller baby? I mean, and that happened in this country. I think though, it's hard because you have tobacco science, which was a commandeered store-bought science, which is what what you're dealing with the FDA and the CDC now. Clearly, all these industries are just buying their science. But what I think, you know, I was thinking over the last couple of days, what I think is really a more important sort of connection is to look at Spotlight, the film that won the Academy Award last year about the Catholic Church. Because with vaccines, what's different than smoking is no one was telling us you need to smoke these cigarettes to stay healthy. Okay, that wasn't what they were there for. They were there for enjoyment. Vaccines are supposed to be good for us. And so that, I think, is the biggest hurdle, is people just say, you know, it's meant to be good. How could they possibly be poisoning us with that? And I think it's the same problem they had in the Catholic Church. You know, the church is there for our well-being and to be taking care of us and taking care of our children, and it's just really, really hard to believe. So every person that gets injured finds themselves on an island because everyone else around them is saying, no, this is really a great thing. And so it makes it a much harder fight, and I think that that's the fight we're up against. Slowly but surely, enough people and their voices start collecting. You say, okay, you know, but also like a religion, we don't, you know, everyone says there's this giant conspiracy that the medical establishment is trying to poison kids. Well, no. Just like there isn't a giant conspiracy for the Catholic Church to, you know, hurt children. The Catholic Church still exists, and now we're starting to do something about it because we knew there were people that were still doing good. We're still there trying to be good priests, trying to take care of their churches. You know, does that mean that I have to go to that church? No, I live in the United States of America. I don't have to be a Catholic if I don't want to. But just because I've decided to stay with the church doesn't, you know, or that there's priests in the church doesn't mean they're all bad. Same thing with medicine. There are great doctors that are not aware this is going on, and then there's a few, I think, that are aware of what's going on, and they're extremely problematic, and they're manipulating the science. But ultimately, no matter what happens with the science, whether it's some doctors or others, the point is I shouldn't have to go to that church. We've had Acupuncture for thousands of years, chiropractic, all of these modalities for healing. When did we allow one of these modalities to say, my God is the only true God? And especially in the United States of America, which was founded on saying we're never going to allow that to happen again. Medicine is a theory. It's a faith. Herd immunity, all of it. There's no causation. The entire, validity of vaccines is just a correlation. They can't prove vaccines ended these diseases. We know that most of them were disappearing on their own. If you want to believe in that science, you want to believe in that church and that God, go right ahead. And I'm going to fight to make sure that those vaccines they're using for you are as safe as they can possibly be. But in this country, founded on freedom of religion, freedom of thought, freedom of ideal, freedom to raise our children, we can never let the church of the pharmaceutical industry own us, period.
Is it gonna work? I'm sorry I have to disagree with you.
Okay?
Wow, I think we are under a conspiracy right now, as a nurse. Because I don't know where our doctors are, but every doctor that I brought this up to just stays on. I can tell they're just trying to drop it. They don't wanna talk about it. Our pharmacy friends just don't wanna talk about it. I got yelled at and screamed at loudly by one of our pharmacy friends' wives, who just, in front of all of our friends, called me names. I just don't know where our healthcare is today. I think it's really going down the tube. But I'm wondering, with all of us parents and grandparents that know that not only as adults, but the children that are going through hell right now, with all of the evidence that we have and you have, can't we take a lawsuit against the CDC since our health care is going to hell?
Yes, we can, and it's something that we're doing. I think the most effective way of dealing with this in a tangible way is to take those 5 people. Maybe you give Thompson a pass because he's come forward, but you take those 5 people and Julie Gerberding and Melinda Wharton and Walter Orenstein, and you indict them on a civil charge, in a class action, and you take them to court. So that they're not shielded behind the vast bureaucratic network of the CDC, and they are made personally accountable. That sends a very, very powerful message to all other scientists who might get involved in this. And that is my preferred course of action, is to take these individuals to court, because you get discovery, you get to depose them, you get to expose the story to everybody.
Can you throw Pan in there too?
And sadly, you can't. There are places I'd like to throw Pan. He is protected, unfortunately, by being a senator and operating within the Senate. That's a great shame. It's a great shame. We have other plans. But I absolutely agree. A legal course of action is the way to go.
I just want to add to that. But first of all, let's just skip all the baloney and cut to the chase, because we all know it's going to come down to the spot scientists anyway, because once we put enough pressure on the CDC, they're going to throw them under the bus and say they did that on their own accord. So let's just go ahead and take the CDC out of it and just get straight to the scientists. They're going to be in hot water no matter what when it all comes down. And if you're one of those scientists and you realize the pressure's on, why don't you step forward now, and maybe we'll group you with Thompson and try and keep from destroying your life, and maybe you'll get to visit your grandchildren in the future. Otherwise, we're coming after you. I do want to make a statement though about, we're being trained in this country to never reference Nazi Germany. I don't know why that is, as though we're like history classes. I think we're going to try and tear those pages out of the book. But the truth is I think doctors now, and this comes from someone that I've worked on a television show that did nothing but celebrate the great things in medicine. I'm a fan of great doctors, great scientists. They're out there. But for every doctor that does what you said, which says, I don't want to hear it, I'm pushing it away, here's what I think is going on. They see Vaxxed now. You can't avoid knowing this story is out there. And so they're hoping that somebody shuts it down, or somebody does something about it before it gets to them, before it affects them, before they have to make a decision, because they feel like that makes them safe. It's safe because all the other, I'm still in the consensus. All the other doctors are along with me, so even if we're wrong, at least I wasn't the bad guy because we were all in this together. And that is the description of a Nazi. That's how that happens. It happens that this might be wrong, but because most of us are doing it, I'm never going to be held out separately, so we're okay because we're safe in numbers going forward the way we are. And I have this to you doctors, you are killing babies and you will be held responsible through history and in your own soul.